What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Required Reading. This week we have three great articles touching kind of a range of topics, but the first one is so timely. It is in The Undefeated. Shout out to The Undefeated by our brother C. Brennan Bunu, and the title is How the NBA Conquered COVID-19. Now, a bit hyperbole, but I think on the heels of the Lakers, shout out to the Lakers, and King James and AD and the whole squad doing it for Kobe and Gigi. On the heels of that, I thought it was quite appropriate just to view, just kind of this type of subject matter. And one of the things that I was thinking about the entire time in the bubble is how the NBA has been a cut above the rest. And I'm not even just talking about sports organizations, because that is even laughable comparatively how they handled COVID, communication, the protocols, things that they put in place with the bubble. But then also just across organizations, it was just seemed so systematic and clear, and there was a lot of clarity around who they need to work with. I think early on there was a little bit of friction because access to testing was still a bit nebulous in the greater society while they were getting access, and I think it just highlighted some of just the class challenges that we experience in this country and the disparity depending on whether or not you're poor or not. But in this case, what I love about what our brother Brandon Bunno does is that he even talks about how just even some of how the research, the testing was driven by the NBA, how they partnered with Yale, and how their excellence in that area has actually spurred on just progress outside of the NBA. I mean, this is something that's gone beyond the bubble and has been able to impact communities, organizations, cities, communities as they look to scale up testing and build capacity and put themselves in a better position. And so I think this is worth a read because you see actually in a little bit more detail what the NBA did, how forward thinking they were about testing and about protocols and the type of things that they put in place. I wasn't going to try to shout out all the companies and things that they work with. And yeah, I gave a shout out to Yale. But again, I think this is a great article, worth a read, and shout out to the NBA. I'm pretty sure many case studies, business school case studies, Stanford, come on, get on it. They're going to be on top of what the NBA did. So tipping my hat to my brother Matt Wolf over there and Adam Silver and at least the team and Amy Brooks and them who just did an exceptional job with the bubble, and obviously the countless others, the 400 plus of employees and people who made it all happen. So I want to give a shout out to the NBA, and I want to give a shout out to this article in The Undefeated, How the NBA Conquered COVID-19. Hyperbole, obviously, by C. Brennan Ugbonu. The second article I kind of tipped my hat to last week a bit is Yelp will label businesses accused of racist behavior. And this was by our brother Reese Oxner. Now, this is just great because I think, sadly, the only thing that really moves here is money. It's like there's a old Mike Geronimo song, nothing move but the money. And typically when you start to threaten the bottom line, that is where actual real change in behaviors and real decisions start to be made. And so Yelp essentially put into place where people who experience firsthand kind of racist incidents, they're able to report that directly to Yelp. And they're and I guess based on a threshold, I think they're still fleshing it out a bit more, but based on a threshold and their kind of independent investigation, they're going to then put that on that company's listing. And what was really interesting about this article was just how much ratings. I mean, I was aware of this clearly, but how much ratings really drive revenue. I think they talked about one rating like from 4 stars to 5 stars. They, with precision and accuracy, it shows how much it affects the bottom line of that business. I think it was something of like sometimes 20%, 20%, something pretty significant. I think this is a good step in the right direction. I know that there's a number of people, and me naturally as well, as like how will they actually work this thing through? Will it be hyper manual? And I think at the end of the day, you have to move in the right direction and figure it out. And so they're building the plan as we fly, but I think this is helpful because I think we've all known, I think by secondary information, what places in our cities, what places around the country where you kind of know that you're not necessarily, the cheers where everybody knows your name, you're not necessarily welcome. Well, this is great where now that will cost you, and it'll cost you in a real way. And hopefully, the green starts to move the hearts of people who are leading these spaces. And I think right now, in a time that already margins are quite slim from a business model, but also in a time of COVID, I think this is well timed. I think this is timely. And I just want to give a kudos to Yelp on taking this step. So I got to figure out who the team is out there, but I got to shout them out. But shout out to Reese Oxner in NPR who wrote this great article. Now, the last one is by our brother Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times this past Sunday. Who's the tax cheat you decide? Now, I think we've come off a couple of weeks ago where some independent research revealed just the level of tax that the current president has been paying over the years, and how that just kind of showed the how bad the system is, and perhaps maybe there was perhaps the foul play in terms of just the taxes. But here's what was big, and I thought this was really, really keen. What Kristof does is that he kind of shows the contrast between somebody so wealthy and how the wealthy are able to kind of game the system, and that there's disproportionate action brought against the poor people when it comes to IRS measures. And one thing that they talked about these 5 counties, the 5 counties in the United States with the highest audit rates are all poor, predominantly African American counties. Highest audit rate. It's the 5 counties, according to taxers, are all predominantly African American counties in the South. And so what he does is he sets up this article well, because he talks about our sister Tanya McDowell. She was the lady who was imprisoned to 5 years because she had forged the address. She put the incorrect address, lied about the address where she lived so that her child could go to a better public school, right? So she used the address of her babysitter to do so. And so he was just contrasting these things. This is like, what does this say about the country that we live in? And here's why I also think this is important, because even when there was conversation surrounding this whole tax thing, I actually saw people of all stripes and colors and background talking about, well, this is the system, right? Who's the tax? Like, this is the system. And so if you have wealth, if you have resources, there are people who will game the system. So the issue is the system. Right? This issue is the laws. The issue is just kind of what type of system is put in place, which disproportionately impacts and does not benefit the least of these. And so there's almost like almost a philosophical question of like, well, if these are laws, then how could you knock somebody from exploiting them? Right? And I think here may be slightly different when we're talking about the current person who is in office, where there may have been real just lying and crime. But in general, I think this puts a bigger magnifying glass on our tax system, right? Where ultimately it's incentivized for those with resources to try to find where they could actually kind of minimize their, as you've heard, tax exposure. So it's about, how do I optimize in this system so that I don't have to pay more taxes? So if somebody has more resources to be able to know those laws, know those loopholes, then naturally this shouldn't surprise us. It shouldn't. And so it was just really, really good to read, and I think it's worth your read again. Who's the Tax Cheat? You Decide by Nicholas Kristof in this Sunday's New York Times opinion section. So those are the 3 articles that I think are great, timely. Definitely let me know your thoughts. And as always, beyond subscribing and sharing and kind of going back and forth with thoughts, if there are any articles you come across that you're like, hey, people need to read, certainly let me know. Let us know. Take care, y'all.